so tonight we're going to enjoy an evening with the 2025 Massachusetts Book Award winner, Jedediah Berry. He is the author of The Naming Song, which was the said winner of the award, also a finalist for the LA Times Book Prize. Let's see here. Jedediah will read from his award-winning novel and discuss its imaginative landscape before opening the floor to audience Q&A. Audience attendees may participate either in person or online. Let's see a little bit about the book. I won't steal too much thunder. And I'm sorry if the mic's giving a little bit of feedback. I should have worked on that a little bit beforehand. So The Naming Song is a widely imaginative, speculative novel that explores the power and politics of language through the story of an unnamed courier working for an authoritarian naming committee. New words become tools of control, and resistance brews among silent radicals and forgotten ghosts in a society where naming is both salvation and erasure. The Naming Song is a thrilling, thought-provoking adventure that fully embraces the beauty and power of what cannot be named. And so Jedediah, as I mentioned, he had his first novel, The Manual of Detection, won the Crawford Award and the Hammett Prize, and was adapted for broadcast by BBC Radio. Together with his partner, writer Emily Hook, he runs Ninepin Press, which is an independent publisher of fiction, poetry, and games in unusual shapes, and he lives in Western Massachusetts. Hopefully I pronounced at least 95% of that correct. I tried. So all of us here in person and those watching online, let's give a big round of applause for Jedediah for joining us here tonight.
So I too just want to thank the Tewksbury Library and the Chelmsford Library for hosting me tonight. It's a real pleasure and honor to get to come out here. Thanks also to the Massachusetts Center for the Book, doing so much amazing work. I mean, in addition to the Massachusetts Book Awards, they're working on literacy projects and promotion of a culture of reading in the Commonwealth that, as someone who has now lived in this state for going on 20 years, I just feel like I've been so enriched by living in a state that supports the arts and that has so many people working so hard to keep that culture alive. I guess it feels more and more relevant every time I give these thanks. Like I'm genuinely happy to be here, but it's also, I mean, anytime I have a chance to thank a library or to thank an organization like the Mass Center for the Book, being in a time in which our freedoms of expression and the freedom to read are being challenged in so many ways, the folks doing this work are truly heroic in my opinion, and I'm grateful for them every day. I am going to read a little bit tonight from my novel, The Naming Song. And so in The Naming Song, the basic premise is that there was an apocalyptic event which wiped language from the face of the earth. And when that happened, all the kind of borders broke down, meaning was lost, and eventually humanity formed a set of committees to kind of bring order back to the chaos. And one of these committees is the Names Committee. And they are responsible for delivering words back into the world from which it has gone away and kind of returning meaning to things. But I wanted to explore both the power of language as a liberating force, but also how it can be co-opted by authoritarianism, by sort of power-grasping egoists. And I was working on this book for over 10 years, and there are parts of it which I wish were much less relevant feeling, but things keep coming up that remind me of this stuff that I've been thinking about for so long. And the parts I'm going to read from tonight will hopefully capture a little bit of that feeling of the excitement and the potential of language, but also delve a little bit into what it means to see kind of meaning co-opted, to see what happens when a power comes into place that tells you things are not what you're seeing, that kind of Orwellian disconnect. The main character of the naming song is a courier. She literally takes a word and finds a place in the world to which that word can be delivered, bringing those words back into circulation. The Names Committee actually lives on a train, and they rove around the named territories, kind of avoiding the nameless, who are this other group of people who remain in a nameless state, and with whom the named have often warred. So that is part of what's going on in the background here. So I'll just read a little from the beginning, which will hopefully give a sense of how this process works. She delivered echo. She delivered echo into a nameless gorge at the edge of everything she knew. Water dripped from rock walls and from the limbs of trees by the river down there. She called out the word, and the word rolled back to her 3, 4, 5 times, the thing calling itself by name, echo. Birds flew out of the gorge. One of the men who'd followed from Jawbone spoke echo, quiet to himself. He said the word sounded strange to him. They always sound strange at first, she said. She delivered stowaway. She climbed aboard a freight train, hid herself in one of the boxcars, dozed as the train rolled east along the canal. The doors slid open to gray light and the rumble of Hollow's factories. 2 watchers peered inside, ghost lenses flashing. She let one of the watchers see her, and he reached for his signal box. Before he could break it open, she stood and spoke the word for the thing she was, stowaway. The watchers spoke the new word to her and to each other until they were sure they had it right. Then they helped her down out of the car. The watchers were happy to have a word for those people, easier to catch them that way. She delivered brass. In an empty house at the edge of Tooth, she found a brass doorknob, a dented brass bowl, a brass cup. She tested their weight, felt the metal grow warm in her hands. She filled the cup with water from her canteen and drank. With the taste of brass still on her tongue, she went outside and made the delivery. From boxes and trunks, out of attics and basements, people brought brass clocks, brass locks, brass toys, brass rings for the fingers, wrists, and neck. She made noise with brass horns, while others covered their ears or smiled and shook their heads because nobody knew how to play. From the factories of Hollow came new things of brass. The couriers of the Names Committee were issued brass buttons for their uniforms. She sat alone at her desk, working with heavy thread. She delivered whiskey. A sayer's son had distilled barrels of the stuff in an old granary, then sent jars to senior members of the committee. Samples for your inspection, he wrote. Book invited the courier to his office to share his portion of the nameless spirit. Obviously a bribe, he said, turning the jar in his hand. Wouldn't be right to drink it alone. Book served as chair of the Names Committee. He decorated his office with purple fabric and soft pillows. He owned a stack of phonograph records from before the silence, along with a phonograph to play them on. He wore gray suits and vests, purple ties and handkerchiefs. There had been no word for handkerchiefs until Book himself requested one from the diviners so he could stop calling it that rag I keep in my jacket pocket. There had been no word purple until Book delivered it, back in his own days as a courier. Let's drink until we're both of us shabby, Book said. Another courier had just delivered shabby, and Book liked to use the newest words. He liked to stretch them where he could. They drank from small tin cups. Book smoked tobacco wrapped in dried tobacco leaves. He had told the diviners to take their time with that one because sometimes Book liked the taste of something nameless. He winced with each sip and was happy. As they drank, he told the courier about the assignment, told her where the young man kept his still, gave her an envelope containing the card on which was inked the word, divined by a diviner but still unspoken, unspeakable until a courier made the delivery. You know I'll just have to drink more when I get there, she said. Then you'll need the practice, Book said, refilling her cup. The courier sank back into the cushions, and Book put his feet up on his desk. It was late. Most of the committee was asleep. Book wore gray slippers, his softest pair. You're keeping up on your training, he said, keeping fit. She was. The courier trained every day. She stretched and lifted weights and ran end to end in the committee's small gymnasium car. She read and read aloud what the old couriers had written down, moons, words on paper, gloves, deliveries. Those texts she could recite from memory. She was the best the committee had, and Book knew it. I could deliver this right here, she said. Better to go out and make a show of it, Book said. We can't let the Sayers think what we do is easy. Let the Sayers think what they want, she said. Book frowned. He did not like this kind of talk. The Sayers stood above all the named, and what they said was law. More than that, their words were the shape of the world. So he switched to his favorite subject, the latest gossip about the other committees. A daughter of the MAPS committee chair had run off and taken up residence in the nameless quarters of Hollow, among the thieves and poets whose stray dreams slipped from the open windows to wander the streets. Of those kids, I am perhaps a little jealous, Book admitted. He smiled, but the courier could tell that something was troubling him. Not this assignment, not the other committees, not runaways. Something about her, maybe. She started to ask, but he downed the last of the liquor and interrupted her with a loud sigh. I hope it's still this good after you've stuck a name to it, he said. They both knew it wouldn't be. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit and just read one more section. Part of the tricky business with a book like this, in the crafting of it, is that I'm trying to create a sense of kind of disorientation because this world is very different from our own and will naturally feel very strange. But I'm trying to model it as best I can in the language. So one of the reasons why it took me so long to write this book was that the narrator doesn't use any words that the people in the world of the book do not yet have access to. So you'll note probably that the language is very spare, and there is sometimes talking around things because they don't have a word for that thing. So you get things like signal box, and you're maybe not quite sure what that is yet, but hopefully the patient reader will hang on and get more clues along the way. There's an animal with whiskers that purrs that is a close friend of the main characters. And I figured if there was any animal that would escape naming far into the future, it would probably be our domestic felines. And so the cats too remain unnamed in the book. But part of the fun of this for me in writing it, especially in writing a fantasy novel in which words are being written around, is that I get to treat words like a kind of magic so that when they do appear on the page, it's hopefully like we're experiencing them for the first time in a way. They're kind of surprising when they show up because they've been absent for so long. This next section I want to read, though, and this will just take me a couple more minutes, and I'd love to open it up for questions. I understand there are many folks at home who are watching, and I'd love to hear from you, as well as those of you here, of course. Writing a fantasy, I'm always looking to find anchor points in the real world, places that feel familiar, places that will kind of connect to our common understanding of how things are. Pardon me one second. And so there's a lot of personal experience in this book. A lot of it was actually written at a place called the Montague Book Mill. I don't know if any of you folks have been as far west as that. Yes, okay, so it's a lovely spot. I had this amazing summer where I lived in a little house like across the street from it, basically, and would just go there and work. And so for those interested in lovely Massachusetts landmarks, the Montague Book Mill, though it does not bear that name, does appear in this book kind of later on. It's really fun to try to sneak these in for folks who would notice them. This next section also came out of a personal experience. I love trains, and I love riding trains. I love riding on trains when I have the chance. And my now wife and I took a train ride This was probably some 7 or 8 years ago, out west to a friend's wedding in Seattle, and had this really memorable moment of I think we were just outside Chicago when a train passed us going in the other direction. And this train just kept going. And the cargo of it was something I'd just never seen in this volume before. And you'll see in this section a version of what I saw that day. She delivered tapestry. She delivered stoat and custom, outrage and shortcut. In Book's office, she said, "You could just read my reports. It's a lot of work to write them down." "It's a lot of work to read them," he said. "Indulge me. I'm an old man, and the sound of your voice is a comfort." So she indulged him with the story of Shortcut, telling him of the narrow route favored by the children of Leaf that wound through alleyways and under balconies, connecting the center of town to the wooded gully where they liked to swim in summer and sled in winter. But she had only just begun speaking when the roar of an engine on the opposite tracks silenced her. An army train. Behind the hulking locomotive came flat car after flat car, green and gray and black. The cars were freighted with war machines, their ghost-burning engines new from the factories, armor plates gleaming like the shells of beetles in the bright winter sun. "So many," the courier said. "Are we at war again?" Book said. "I can never remember." He was trying to sound bored, but not quite succeeding. The wars with the Nameless had begun shortly after the rise of the Sayers and the exile of the Names Committee. It was the courier Rain who had delivered war, then marched with the first soldiers into battle against the enemy in the wilderness west of Whisper. For a long time, the Nameless had the upper hand. Monsters, bred in nightmares and seething with hatred for named things, poured over the borders to break walls and buildings and people. Only after the Named learned to build and pilot war machines were they able to push the monsters back. I feel like I should add a note here that, while I've been talking about all this very serious stuff in this book, it's also kind of an adventure novel and very much inspired by a lot of Japanese animation, like the Miyazaki films. And so some of what you'll hear here is really kind of coming from that place of wonder that I love to find and access when I can, of just enjoying an adventure story. So, yeah. So these war machines, they're basically giant robots, just to be clear. The courier counted 3 types of machine on the train. The biggest were the brutes, slouched like dozing bears, clawed hands resting in their laps. Only slightly smaller were the mantises, which the courier knew from the stories to be very fast, their forearms lined with jagged blades. Smallest were the lizards, sleek and nimble, serving mostly as scouts. None of these machines were primed. That was the word the committee had delivered to describe the process that made a war machine operable. Each would have a monster burned in its furnace to transfer something of its spirit into the machine. Only then, with a pilot trained to negotiate with the monster in its bones, could a war machine stand against the living monsters of the Nameless. The process had been refined by her own father when he worked for the army years before she was born. Locke had told her stories of the battles, of machines roaring and coughing steam while launching explosive shells and belching flaming naphtha, fields and meadows lit by the burning monsters the size of train cars. Some of the oldest machines still patrolled the borders and railways, but most had been decommissioned. The cost to keep them running was high. Once the machines were primed, only the ghosts of people, pure and unrefined, were potent enough to fire those great engines. So instead of war machines, the Named sent Maps Committee surveyors to chart the land. The couriers delivered names to hills, rivers, and meadows. The Sayers spoke law and established settlements on the borders. The borders shifted outward, and with them the outposts of the Wranglers, who trekked deeper into Nameless territory to capture ghosts for the auction houses. By the way, there are ghosts in this book too. Maybe I should have mentioned that, but It's a thing that the people in the book almost don't talk about, that ghosts are there, and there's a reason for it, which has to do with words and a word that is missing. And ghosts also, I think more chillingly, serve as a source of fuel and a sort of a trade good. And so there's a lot about ghosts in the book and kind of a reckoning having to do with their status in this world. And hadn't the borders been quiet for many years? Most of the monsters encountered by the named were sorry, ragged things. A shouted word would send them scampering into the shadows. Yet here were new machines, the train that bore them stretching on and on. Because of Buckle, the courier asked. There have been other attacks, Book said quietly. Some among the sayers think the only way to stop them is with a show of force. She knew which sayers he meant. The one named Frost would be first among them, but Book didn't like to talk about Frost, and neither did she. But where are they going, she asked. Who will they fight? Book looked uncomfortable. There are reports, which I do not necessarily believe, that the Maps Committee is on the verge of a major discovery. Their scouts speak of a city that stands at the edge of the world. I don't understand, the courier said. I think you do, Book said. A city. And beyond the city, nothing at all. Nothing to be mapped, nothing to be named. There had long been rumors, even before Book delivered the word rumor, of the last great city of the nameless. It appeared in a few old songs and stories, mostly those told by the Black Square Show or swapped by ghost wranglers and Dreams Committee hunters in the remote outposts and lodges. If the reports are mistaken, then why so many new machines, she asked. Without thinking, she had prompted Book to admit that the sayers could be wrong. But what the sayers said was law, and it was their law that bound the Names Committee to the train, that granted Book his power as committee chair. Who was he to speak against the sayers? Still, the cars of the army train swept past, the metal skin of war machines flashing in the sunlight. Maybe that's enough for now, Book said, closing the cover on her report. Another one for the archives, yes? His voice was steady, but as he swiveled in his chair and drew the curtain closed, the courier could see that his hand was shaking. From there, the courier does indeed go on an adventure. She ends up having to leave the committee and is actually under suspicion of murder. So she flees with a ghost and her unnamed animal companion, as well as a monster that she accidentally creates, and she goes looking for her long-lost sister. One of the things I really enjoyed doing in this book is thinking about the how to mirror the sort of world, the setting, with the sort of microcosmic world of a family. So even as there's the silence that has kind of taken hold of the world, there are all these things within the courier's family that they simply don't talk about. And so her kind of personal journey is one of challenging the status quo, finding the people and the ideas that she needs to kind of rise up against the authoritarian power, while at the same time just figuring out her mess of a family and talking about some of the things that have been left unsaid for so long. I've been going on for a while here. I'm very happy to take questions if you have any. I believe Robert said he would be communicating questions from the folks at home, but I don't see him close by. So if okay, but if anyone here has any questions, I'd be happy to discuss.
I don't have a question, more just a comment. You know, I heard about the book through Messenger from Book, read the book, and really loved it. The way you talk about your sparse use of language, to do that and then create these really magical scenes and landscapes. It was a very fun book to read.
Great.
To see her get power and do the things that she needed to do in her journey.
Right.
It's really a beautiful book.
Well, that's great. Oh, goodness. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for reading it. And yeah, thank you for those words. It was a really interesting task to try to keep the language that simple, and it was sometimes like really boggling. And there are certain words, I kept a list of words that I was not permitted to use because because some of them actually play like a real plot role. But the satisfying thing about that too is that kind of became the engine of the book, like having that sort of it was like a place I could go in my brain where there was just this kind of spare, almost empty space where I had to be very careful in selecting the words. And I mean, as a reader and lover of fantasy novels and fantasy film, I just found myself thinking a lot about how much work fantasy writers do to invent a language, and I love that. I mean, I love invented languages. I love a book with a map and a glossary. I'll take all that stuff. It's great. But I wanted to see if I could make like the English language feel like it was almost something in translation or something that was being rediscovered. And so that was the that became the goal, and it was hard one, but I won't do it again, but I'm glad I did it. Yeah. Great. Any other questions or thoughts?
And have a character create a word just because you had to use it.
Sorry, say again.
I'm curious if you had to break down and have a character create a word so that you could then use it as
Oh, okay. Yes. Did I have to have some words added in so characters could use them? Yes. One thing I did, I sometimes found myself wanting a word so badly for a sentence, I would put it in there and then note it and decide this is something that was delivered recently, and that was kind of another list I kept. And then I would go back and put them into those early chapters to hopefully make clear that they were new words and. Yeah, and those moments were really fun to play with. It's one of my favorite writers, Ursula Le Guin, did so much about language and magic and how we think of incantations and we think of how words kind of make a thing real, and so I was really able to kind of in a very up close sort of way get to think about my love of certain words. Like the word trouble is a word that comes up a lot in this book. The courier delivers the word trouble, and it becomes a word associated with her. So that was a word I got to like turn over and kind of look at from every possible angle. When is trouble bad, and what kind of good trouble can be made, and what does it mean if you are trouble, right? So yes, that's a long-winded way of saying yes, absolutely, to your question. Yeah.
Are you interested in other languages? I've been studying German for a year and a half, and it's really kind of fascinating to see what words are like English words, what words are completely different.
Right.
How the sentences are constructed in insane ways. If you ever read Mark Twain's essay on learning German, it's hilarious.
Oh, cool.
It would never make you want to learn it.
Right.
The verb is at the end of these long sentences, and you're waiting to get to what was actually going to happen in the sentence.
Right. Yes, I love that.
I just wanted to know if you have studied other languages and if that has fed your imagination as well.
Right. A bit. It's something I always feel that I need to be doing more of. I mean, I have studied some French and some Italian, and I got to go to Italy when this book came out there last year, and a couple things that I experienced of that language were really kind of profound to me. I mean, one thing I'm definitely tapping into in this book is actually the experience of being in a place where I don't know the language and feeling that kind of strangeness and disconnection, while also finding again and again that people want to connect, and I feel I've been very lucky in that way. But in college, I studied the works of Italo Calvino, an Italian writer who the translator William Weaver taught where I went to school, and that was so fascinating because he talked a lot about translation, and we would look at the Italian and the English, and he would talk through the choices that he made, and realizing how much of that art is a translation that is, linguistic but also cultural, and how to preserve a style and accentuate a style. I find all that incredibly fascinating. The one other way I'll answer that question, though, is to say that I have a almost 3-year-old at home, and watching language acquisition just happening in real time has been one of the most powerful experiences I've had as just a person who lives in words. Just seeing my daughter just consume language and how it comes back out and in these new and surprising ways all the time. It's just so fun. So that too. I mean, she came along kind of towards the end of writing this, but so it's that wasn't exactly a factor there, but it's made me think about this in some new ways as well that I've really appreciated. Yeah. One thing that I've done, my next book, I should note. So it's called. I brought this copy because I just got a physical review copy. It's called Kill All Wizards. And this I've gone in the complete opposite direction, which has been kind of a blast. This is a narrator who is very present, who uses very long-winded words and expresses opinions all the time. And it's been kind of a nice thing to just switch stylistically and go into the way I describe this is that it's a little bit like Conan the Barbarian, but in a Jane Austen setting. And so instead of sword and sorcery, I like to call it sword and sourceability. But it's got that very Jane Austen kind of narrator who just feels like really warm and present on the page. And that's been really nice.
So Jedediah, we don't have any questions yet, but we do have positive comments from Douglas and Mary Ellen and PJ and Dave and Laura. So we thank them for tuning in. We had a little bit of a YouTube snafu, but we powered through that. But no questions yet.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. Very
And
good.
at this point, we can take a couple more questions from those in the room if they'd like, but then we can wrap up. Okay.
Sure.
And I will interrupt if I get anything online.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. My mom worked as a radio DJ, and she would. When I was a kid, I would go with her to the station sometimes, and there was always that moment of like, who's going to call in to, But she was talking about how before the internet, for some reason, people would just call the DJ to ask random questions, like, could you settle a bet? I always thought that was so funny. But yeah, if you have any last questions or comments, I'd be happy to take them. Otherwise, also happy to wrap up.
I'm kind of
Yeah.
interested in your interest in games.
Yeah.
Purchased your cards because I love cards. And
Oh, right.
I do tarot and
Yes.
just how does that connect to your world as a writer?
Sure. Yeah, I could talk about this a lot, and I'll try not to go too far. But so the question is about my connection to games and that influence. So I'll say first, as a kid, I played a lot of tabletop role-playing games with my friends. I knew something called Dungeons and Dragons existed, but I didn't have access to it. I lived in a very small town in upstate New York, and there was no place to get the books. So I just kind of made it up. And my friends and I would just tell these stories for each other, basically. I mean, I think what's so fascinating about that, about those games is that they're kind of an art form unto themselves. It's like a spontaneous, free-form, ad-libbed, just storytelling, like a theater show you put on, and it is ephemeral, and then it's gone, and you have this kind of shared moment together. So I think a lot of my interest in games and narrative stems from that. The cards you refer to is probably the Family Arcana, which was a story that I wrote that was published as a poker deck. It has a little bit of text on each card, and you shuffle it and read it in any order. And that, that came about kind of from that stuff and thinking about randomness and the idea of oracles, like the idea of consulting something and making a story out of it. I still use those kinds of techniques in my writing. I think I've noticed that I tend to thrive when I'm a writer, when I have a plan, but then I frustrate that plan in ways that surprise me. And so sometimes it can be as simple as drawing a word from the dictionary and deciding I need to incorporate that, or pulling a tarot card, or something of that nature, just to kind of interrupt things and introduce a new perspective. So games provide that for me too. I really love the idea of introducing elements of chance into storytelling, because it just kind of keeps things feeling spontaneous and surprising. Yeah. Yeah, right. Absolutely. Yeah, improvisation. Right, that's right. And in a way, I think readers can feel when a writer catches themselves off guard, when something happens that is improvisational, that wasn't exactly planned out, can have a liveliness on the page. And I may be wrong, but sometimes when I'm reading a book, I'll feel like, I'm sensing one of these moments, and it's just joyful and maybe strange in some way, or just, or you feel the writer kind of unlocking something that they didn't know they were going to come upon. So I try to give space to those moments, and I think when I think about writing as ways to connect us, and language as ways to connect us, it's that kind of sharing of joy that is so key, and that too, I guess, is like improvisation, game. I mean, children playing games and modeling, but also just exploring the world through play. I want to kind of hold on to that in my writing as much as possible.
All right, so folks, let's give Jedediah a big round of applause, both those here in the room and those watching virtually. Jedediah, any last words for the audience?
Goodness, no, just thank you again. Thank you again for coming. Real pleasure to get to come out here, and I hope if you read the naming song or my next book, and have thoughts or questions, I'm on the internet. Track me down, say hello. I'm always happy to hear from readers.
All right, so thank you to Tewksbury Telemedia, to Lala Books, to Mass Center for the book, and Chelmsford Library for all they've done to help to make tonight's program a success virtually, and I'd say a success in the room as well. So thank you all so much, and I hope everyone has a great night. Bye-bye.